Late, 27th floor. I knelt scrubbing a coffee stain from the conference room floor when her stiletto heel slammed into my ribs. "Can't handle one spot?" she hissed, directly under the security camera's lens. I swallowed blood and tapped my watch. 10:42 p.m. Thanks for the timestamp. They think I'm the dutiful daughter who just takes it. They don't know my brother is back from the war, and he brought the discipline of a true investigation with him. My name is Avery Cole. I am 32 years old, and I am, on paper, the Director of Regulatory Compliance at Granite and Vale Capital. Tonight, however, I am on my hands and knees. It's Friday, 10:28 p.m. The 27th floor of the Granite and Vale Tower in downtown Ravenmore is a morgue quiet, populated only by the exhausted ghosts of the junior staff. This is Sloan Vale's masterpiece of corporate culture. The mandatory internal stewardship program. Once a month, the lights stay on late, the third-party cleaning crews are canceled, and we, the associates and mid-level managers, are handed rags and spray bottles. Sloan, my stepmother and our head of human resources, calls it team building. She says it fosters humility and a shared sense of ownership. What it really fosters is the biting, metallic smell of industrial-grade ammonia and the shared understanding of who holds the leash. I'm in the Northbridge conference room. It's a glass box suspended over the city, all chrome and black leather and a 30-foot obsidian table. My job tonight is the glass, all of it, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights, the internal glass partitions, the whiteboards. My suit jacket is off, my silk blouse is sticking to my back, and my knees ache from pressing into the low-pile carpet. I hear her before I see her. The sound is unmistakable. A sharp, punitive click-clack on the marble hallway floor. It's a sound that tightens the spines of everyone on this floor. Sloan doesn't walk. She conducts a percussive assault on her surroundings. She enters the room, and the temperature drops. Sloan Vale is all angles and expensive fabrics, a severe blonde bob framing a face that finds everything wanting. Her shoes tonight are needlepoint stilettos, weapons disguised as fashion. She is my father's second wife, the woman who replaced my mother and then installed herself as the arbiter of our corporate and family lives. She walks the perimeter, not looking at me, but at my work. Her gaze is an audit. She's running a manicured finger along the aluminum tracks of the sliding glass doors, checking for dust. She finds none. She inspects the chrome legs of the conference chairs, searching for a smudge. I've already polished them twice. A few of my colleagues, Mark from junior underwriting, Priya from logistics, are finishing up in the hallway, packing away the vacuum cleaners. They see Sloan enter the room, and they freeze. They are waiting for their cue to leave, but they won't move until she dismisses them. They are also, I know, waiting to see who becomes the night's example. Often it's me. Sloan stops at the far end of the room, by the main partition that separates us from the trading floor. She tilts her head, her reflection a pale mask in the dark glass. "Here," she says. Her voice isn't loud, but it cuts through the silence and the distant hum of the building's HVAC system. I get to my feet, my knees cracking in protest. I pick up my bottle of Windex and my roll of paper towels and walk the length of the table. She points. "There, you missed it." I look. I genuinely cannot see it. I squint, moving my head to catch the light differently, and then I see it. Not a streak, not a fingerprint, but a ghost, the faint, evaporated ringlet of a coffee mug. Set down hours ago during a meeting I wasn't invited to. It's almost invisible, a watermark on the reinforced glass. I start to say. "You don't what, Avery?" she snaps. "You don't see it? Or you don't care?" "I see it. I'll get it." I kneel down again. The carpet is damp here from a previous pass. The chemical smell thick in my throat. I spray the glass, the hiss of the nozzle sounding obscenely loud. I begin to wipe in tight, concentric circles, the way my mother taught me, the way that never leaves streaks. I am focused on the circle, on the pressure of my hand against the cold surface, on the task. "Not good enough," Sloane's voice comes from directly above me. Before I can process the words, the impact comes. It's not a shove, it's a kick, precise, targeted, and brutal. The stiletto heel of her right shoe, reinforced with a metal rod, slams directly into my left floating rib. It is a blinding, white-hot explosion of pain. All the air leaves my lungs in a silent whoosh. I taste copper and ammonia. I collapse sideways, my shoulder hitting the glass partition with a dull thud. The overhead fluorescent lights, long, sterile tubes, blur into streaks of white. I am gasping, trying to pull in a breath that won't come. My body curled tight around the epicenter of the pain. I hear a small, satisfied sound from her. Can't handle one spot? Through the swimming, nauseating pain, I force my right hand to move. My fingers find the bezel of my smartwatch. I tap the screen twice, then press the custom complication I built. A tiny red microphone icon illuminates the screen. Audio recording started. Simultaneously, the watch face displays the time in large, clear numerals and logs it to a secure file. 10:42 p.m. Thanks for the timestamp. I manage to breathe. The words are barely a whisper, ragged and wet. Sloane scoffs, but I see her eyes flicker. Just for a second. The bravado wavers. She hadn't expected me to speak. From the corner of my eye, I see the movement in the hallway. Mark and Priya. They saw it. I saw their heads jerk up at the sound of the impact, and now I see them turn, deliberately, and walk away. Mark suddenly finds something fascinating on his phone. Priya adjusts her bag, her back to me, and disappears around the corner. They didn't see. They will swear they saw nothing. The carpet is damp. The air is thick with the smell of ammonia, and I am completely, utterly alone. Or so she thinks. I force myself to push up onto one elbow, despite the pain. My focus is clear. I glance down. The microdot microphone is active and recording. The entire system has been in place for 6 months. I tip my head back, my hair sticking to my cheek. My gaze travels up the chrome beam in the corner of the room, up, to the ceiling. There it is, the black, mirrored dome of the security camera, lens 4B, a Bosch Autodome 7000. It sees this entire room, corner to corner, and Sloane is standing directly under it, her face, her posture, her leg extending. It's all there, captured in high definition. She follows my gaze. A genuine, cold smile spreads across her face. "You have no proof, Avery," she whispers, leaning down, her expensive perfume washing over me, trying to mask the stink of the chemicals. "Nothing." She believes it. She's HR. She knows the retention policy. She knows the cameras are on a 7-day loop. She knows that by Monday morning, this footage will be overwritten. She probably also knows that the junior IT tech on duty tonight is one of her placemen. She straightens her skirt, a picture of immaculate corporate authority. "Finish the room," she orders, her voice back to its normal, clipped tone. "And lock up. Don't forget to set the alarm." She turns, and the click-clack of her heels resumes, fading down the marble corridor, leaving me in the chemical silence. I stay on the floor for another minute, letting the pain settle from a roaring fire to a pulsing, deep ache. I catalog it. A cracked rib, most likely. Maybe 2. It will make breathing difficult for weeks. It will be a constant physical reminder. I slowly, agonizingly, pull myself up to my knees. I grab the paper towel and press it against the glass, finishing the circle I started. The faint coffee ring vanishes. The glass is perfect. I look back up at the camera. 10:42 p.m. Northbridge conference room, I whisper, just for the lapel mic. Assault, physical, stepmother. Sloane is smart. She knows the 7-day loop. She knows about the tech on duty. What she doesn't know is that I wrote the compliance brief for our new data retention vendor. I was the one who signed off on the system upgrade last week. I was the one who read the full 300-page service agreement. The old system had a 7-day loop. The new system, installed 3 days ago, has mirrored real-time cloud backup, It has immutable storage. The local hard drives were replaced, yes, but they are now just the first stop. The footage from 10:42 p.m. isn't just on a server downstairs that her tech can wipe. It's already in a vault in another state. I rise to my feet, clutching my side. I look at my reflection in the glass she kicked me for. My face is pale. My eyes are dark, but I am not broken. She wanted one spot gone. She has no idea what a mess she just stepped in. The lobby of Granite and Vale Capital is a cathedral of polished granite and reassuringly expensive, muted art, and on every wall, on every digital display, is the brand identity. A family company, a legacy of trust. The centerpiece of this campaign is a series of professionally shot photographs. My father, Grant Cole, CEO, looking statesmanlike, his hand resting on the shoulder of his wife, Sloan Vale, our head of human resources. They are always pictured together, a united front of corporate leadership and familial warmth. In some shots, they are laughing over a blueprint. In others, they are shaking hands with smiling employees. But the photographs are a lie, not just for what they show, but for what they omit. There is no picture of Evan. My brother, First Lieutenant Evan Cole, does not fit the narrative. His service, his 4-year absence in a war zone, his stubborn sense of honor, these are not assets that can be leveraged in an annual report. His face, lean and intense, does not blend with the soft focus aesthetic Sloan has cultivated. So, he is simply not there. The space where a son should be is filled with an artfully placed ficus or a tasteful bronze statue. Granite and Vale is a family company where one of the children has been surgically excised. This branding is the public-facing version of a sickness that metastasizes in private. The most potent strain is cultured at the mandatory Sunday dinners. I drive to their sterile, glass-walled mansion in the Ravenmore Hills, my ribs screaming with every turn of the wheel. The kick from 2 nights ago has settled into a deep, throbbing ache that makes breathing a conscious, painful effort. I park my modest sedan between Sloan's gleaming white Tesla and my father's black Maserati. I am the only one who still uses a key. Inside, the house smells of nothing. No food, no dust. Just the faint chemical tang of the same cleaning service that doesn't service our office on Stewardship Fridays. Dinner is served precisely at 7. We sit at a table that could comfortably seat 20. There are only 3 of us. My father, Grant, sits at the head. Sloan sits to his right, close enough to manage his wine glass, his plate, and his opinions. I am assigned the far end of the table, a lonely satellite in their gravitational pull. The stewardship program is having a profound effect on morale, Grant, Sloan says, swirling her Pinot Noir. She never looks at me when she speaks, addressing all her comments to my father, even when the subject is me. You can feel the energy shift. When people take ownership of their own space, they develop pride. It elevates the entire corporate culture. My father nods, his eyes focused on the slab of salmon in front of him. Excellent. Sloan, truly, your instincts for personnel are second to none. He hasn't made direct eye contact with me since I arrived. He hasn't since my mother died, and he married Sloan 6 months later. A move of such breathtakingly poor timing that it felt less like grief and more like a merger. Sloan places a document binder next to his plate. It's navy blue, embossed with the company logo. Just the revised vendor contracts for Q4. Facilities, nothing you need to trouble yourself with. Darling, just your signature. My father picks up his Mont Blanc pen, opens the cover, and signs the last page. He doesn't read the first. He doesn't ask what facilities entails or why the contracts are being revised. He trusts Sloan's HR instincts. He signs away millions, signs away oversight, signs away his own company, all because the woman next to him told him to. He avoids my gaze because I am the compliance department. I am the living reminder of the rules he is breaking, the due diligence he is ignoring. I am the walking, breathing evidence of his abdication. And I am the sister of the son he drove away. Evan left 4 years, 2 months, and 11 days ago. I remember the sound of the argument, the shattering glass. It wasn't a physical fight. It was a detonation of principles. Evan had just finished his junior year, top of his class, and discovered my father had rerouted his tuition trust to cover one of Sloane's discretionary corporate expenditures. "It's just money, Evan," my father had yelled, his voice echoing in the cavernous marble foyer. "I'll replace it." "It wasn't the money," Evan roared back, and it was the last time I heard him raise his voice. "It was the honor. You took my name, and you put it on a lie." Sloane had watched from the top of the stairs, smiling, a hand resting lightly on the banister. Evan walked out that night. The next week, he was at a recruitment office. He signed a 4-year contract with the Army. He wanted to be somewhere where, in his words, the chain of command is clear and the rules mean something. He hasn't been back. He hasn't called. My father refers to him as on assignment, as if he's scouting a new market in Asia, not patrolling a desert half a world away. After Evan left, I knew I couldn't fight them from the outside. I finished my undergrad, went straight to law school. I didn't specialize in litigation or M&A. I specialized in compliance, in governance, in Sarbanes-Oxley. I learned the language of audits, of forensic accounting, of internal controls. I learned the architecture of the very systems my father and Sloane were ignoring. When I graduated, I applied for a job at Granite and Vale. Sloane, in a public display of magnanimity, hired me. She put me in the mailroom. "We all have to start somewhere, Avery," she'd said, patting my hand at a company town hall, a photographer catching the tender moment. "We can't show favoritism." I worked my way up, mailroom to paralegal assistant, paralegal to junior compliance analyst. It took me 6 years to get my current title. 6 years of being patronized, sidelined, and overlooked. Sloane never saw me as a threat. She saw me, as she once told my father over dinner, as an obligation to be managed, a loose end from his first marriage that needed to be kept close, kept quiet, and kept under control. Her internal PR campaign was flawless. On the company intranet, she was the devoted stepmother, the one who graciously brought Avery into the G&V family. The articles were always paired with photos of her mentoring me, her hand on my shoulder, a condescending smile on her face as I stared at a spreadsheet. The narrative was simple. Sloane was the healer, the integrator. I was the difficult one, the hard-to-reach daughter, the one who wasn't a team player, who resisted integration, my refusal to laugh at her jokes in the break room, my quiet focus on my work, my insistence on following protocol. It was all spun as evidence of my emotional instability, my lingering grief, my rebellious phase at 32. The crown jewel of this hypocrisy hangs in the Human Resources Department, on the wall of the small, windowless room reserved for disciplinary action and terminations. It's a large framed poster, in the same warm, inviting font as the lobby branding. It reads, "Family First." This is the room where people are told they are being restructured, where they are reminded of their non-disclosure agreements, where Sloane sits, flanked by a company lawyer, and systematically dismantles someone's career before having security escort them from the building. Family first. The lie is so pervasive, so suffocating, that it has become the truth for everyone else. They see the photographs in the annual report, the warm smiles, the staged laughter. They don't see what happens just outside the frame. They don't hear the slammed doors, the whispered threats. They don't receive the directives emailed at 1:17 a.m. from Sloane's account, demanding adherence to some new, arbitrary rule. They don't feel the sting of a stiletto heel in a dark conference room. I take a small, careful sip of water, the ice clinking against the glass. The pain in my side is a sharp, grounding presence. It cuts through the fog of their perfume and their lies. For 4 years, I have been silent. I have been obedient. I have taken the demotions, the public condescension, and now, the physical violence. I have knelt. I have cleaned their floors. Sloane mistakes this for surrender. My father mistakes it for acceptance. They are both wrong. My silence is not weakness. It is observation. My obedience is not defeat. It is camouflage. Every document I've filed, every protocol I've written, every camera specification I've memorized, it has all been in preparation for this. Sloan just gave me the final piece of evidence, and they are all sitting here, under the soft glow of their dining room chandelier, admiring their perfect family picture, completely unaware that the trap I've been building for half a decade just snapped shut. On Monday morning, the pain in my ribs is a cold, sharp metronome, counting out the seconds until I act. I sit at my desk, the ergonomic chair, a torture device against my bruised side. I take a sip of black coffee, the bitterness a welcome distraction. The office is humming with the usual start-of-week energy, a low thrum of keyboards and conference calls. No one looks at me twice. I am, as always, part of the furniture. My job is to notice things, to see the cracks in the corporate facade that others walk past. I was hired, ironically, to prevent the very rot that has now consumed the company from its core. For years, I've been documenting the periphery of the disease. Today, I go for the heart. I bypass my usual workflow and pull up the master vendor files on my system. I type a name into the search bar, Northbridge Janitorial. The file opens, and the sickness is immediately apparent. They have an exclusive 5-year contract for all sanitation and maintenance services for the Granite and Vale Tower. No competitive bidding, exclusive, for a company of our size. That is a colossal red flag, a flare lighting up the night sky. I drill down into the financials. The line items are poetry of fraud. Proprietary particulate matter remediation, bioluminescent surface sterilization, acoustic dampening maintenance. It's nonsense. Jargon designed to inflate invoices past the scrutiny of a lazy accounts payable department. The monthly fee is, by my estimate, a full 40% above the market rate for a building this size. We are paying a premium for a service we aren't even receiving, especially on the last Friday of every month. Then I find the signature. The contract was executed 26 months ago. I cross-reference the date with the procurement department's records. The official request for proposal. The RFP that is legally mandated by our own corporate charter for any contract over $100,000 was issued on March 15th. Sloan Vale's digital signature, authorizing the final contract with Northbridge, is time-stamped March 11th. She approved and signed a multi-million-dollar contract 4 days before it was even open for bidding. It wasn't a procurement process. It was a coronation. The next thread is the one she dangles in front of us constantly. Granite Cares, the company's charitable foundation. It's Sloan's pet project, her vehicle for social climbing in Ravenmore. The foundation hosts a lavish annual gala, a monument to corporate self-congratulation. I open the files for the last 2 galas. I scroll through the sponsorship packages, gold, silver, bronze, and then, at the very top, the sole platinum sponsor, the presenting partner for both years. Northbridge Janitorial. The money flows in a perfect, corrupt circle. Granite and Vale pays a grossly inflated fee to Northbridge. Northbridge, in a stunning display of corporate citizenship, donates a handsome 6-figure sum back to Granite and Vale's own charity, which Sloan controls with absolute authority. The donation earns them public praise and ensures the contract is renewed without question. It's a self-licking ice cream cone of graft. And where does the rest of the money go? The spread between the inflated price and the charitable kickback? I pull up the HR policy archives. I search for volunteer. There it is. In the minutes of a Human Resources Subcommittee meeting from 3 years ago, the proposal for the Internal Stewardship Program. The justification is written in Sloan's unique brand of manipulative prose. To foster a non-hierarchical, team-oriented environment, and to mitigate escalating overtime expenditures in the facilities department. There it is. Mitigate escalating overtime expenditures. The mandatory volunteer program isn't about team building, it's about wage theft. It's a carefully constructed scheme to avoid paying our legally mandated overtime support staff by forcing salaried employees to do their work for free under the guise of corporate spirit. This also allows Northbridge to bill for a full cleaning crew that doesn't show up one night a month, pocketing the difference. This isn't the first time I've seen these threads. 6 months ago, I compiled a preliminary risk assessment memo. I flagged the non-competitive Northbridge contract and the unusual sponsorship arrangement as potential conflicts of interest. I followed protocol. I submitted it directly to Sloan as the head of HR, my immediate superior in this chain. Her response, a 2-sentence email, is seared into my memory. Thank you for the memo. Avery, at present, this analysis appears to lack objective, actionable evidence of any policy violation. It was a dismissal, a pat on the head. Go back to your desk, little girl. The adults are talking. She wanted objective, actionable evidence. I open a new, encrypted spreadsheet on my personal drive. I begin to map the data points. Column A, date of payment to Northbridge. Column B, invoiced amount. Column C, date of Northbridge. Sponsorship payment to Granite Cares. Column D, amount. Column E, date of corresponding withdrawal from the Granite Cares discretionary fund, a fund that requires only Sloan's signature. The pattern is stark. Within 48 hours of every major payment to Northbridge, a portion comes back as a donation, and within 24 hours of that donation clearing, a significant amount is withdrawn from the discretionary fund. The line item description for these withdrawals is always the same: consultant and advisor fees. There are no names, no invoices, just a steady hemorrhage of cash into the hands of ghosts. These are the kickbacks, paid to untraceable consultants. I pull the transaction details. They aren't wire transfers. They're bulk purchases of untraceable, high-limit prepaid gift cards. I had all of this: the financial data, the suspicious contract, the HR policy that felt more like coercion than culture, but it was all circumstantial. A good defense attorney could argue it away as sloppy bookkeeping, an unorthodox, but not illegal business relationship. I could show the what, but not the who or the why. I had the body of the crime, but no weapon, no motive beyond greed. The kick in the conference room was the missing piece. It wasn't just a moment of cruelty, it was a legal catalyst. It was a senior executive of a publicly traded company committing a violent act against a subordinate on company property. My fingers fly across the keyboard. I open the Granite and Veil Corporate Governance Charter, the document I helped rewrite 2 years ago. I scroll to Article 4, Section 3A, Code of Executive Conduct. And there it is, the clause I myself insisted on including, borrowing language from federal sentencing guidelines. Any verified act of fraud, physical assault, or willful malfeasance committed on corporate property by a designated officer of the company shall be considered a gross violation of fiduciary duty. Such a violation will trigger an immediate, non-discretionary review by the board's ethics committee and will automatically activate any and all clawback provisions pertaining to salary, bonuses, and vested stock options for the preceding 24 months. The financial rot was a disease in the foundations. The kick was the gunshot in the boardroom. It's loud, undeniable, and it has witnesses. One of them is electronic. I open my email. I draft a new message. It is a formal litigation hold and evidence preservation request. I am careful with the wording. I don't mention an assault. I don't mention Sloan. The subject line is bland. Request pertaining to potential policy violation, Northbridge Conference Room. In the body, I cite my authority as Director of Regulatory Compliance. I formally request that all security camera data from Camera 4B, Northbridge Conference Room, for the period of Friday, October 17th, between 10:30 p.m. and 11 p.m., be immediately preserved and isolated, pending a compliance review. I attach a digital chain of custody form, a document that creates a legally binding, unbroken record of who handles the evidence. I address it to the head of IT, and I CC the company's general counsel, a man I know to be weak but terrified of personal liability. Sending it to him makes this an official legal matter. It ties his hands. He cannot ignore it. I hit send. An hour later, an automated alert I placed on the security server months ago pops up in the corner of my screen. Executive Override Access, S. Veil. Server, GVC SEC01. Directory, CAM Archive, 4B. Action, delete. I lean back in my chair, the movement sending a fresh jolt of pain through my side. I can picture her perfectly, standing in front of the server rack in the chilly IT room, her face illuminated by the monitor. She found my request in the IT ticketing system. She is laughing. Probably. A thin, triumphant smile. She is clicking her mouse, dragging the file to the trash, feeling the thrill of her own power as she erases what she believes is the only proof. She thinks she is cutting the final thread. She is a fool. She just deleted a copy, a local copy, an irrelevant piece of data that now serves only to prove her intent to destroy evidence. The real evidence, the master file, is not on that server. Thanks to the new data retention service I approved, the instant the footage was recorded, it was encrypted and mirrored to an immutable cloud server in a data fortress in Utah. It cannot be altered. It cannot be deleted, not even by God. And the act of her deleting the local file? That, too, has been logged, with her executive credentials, at a precise timestamp. She wanted objective, actionable evidence. She just provided it. I spent the morning watching the digital tripwires I'd set. 11:05 a.m. Sloan's executive credentials were logged accessing the IT security server. 11:06 a.m. A delete command was executed on the local file directory for camera 4B. 11:07 a.m. Her credentials were used to exit the server room. It was beautiful. It was clean. It was intent. I was so focused on the digital trail that I almost missed the physical one. I'd gone down to the main lobby, needing to walk, to breathe through the fire in my ribs, to remind my body that it was still mine. The vast granite and glass expanse was busy. Analysts and partners, all in identical suits, moved with anxious energy. The air hummed with the sound of quiet conversations and the soft ding of the main elevator bank. The doors to car 3 slid open. The usual crowd spilled out, but my eyes snagged on one figure who remained. He was in the standard issue blue and gray uniform of Granite and Veil Corporate Security. He was taller than the other guards, and he stood with a rooted, profound stillness that was utterly alien to this building. The lobby's chaotic flow parted around him as if he were a stone in a stream. He was holding his regulation cap in his hands, not awkwardly, but with purpose. He looked up, his eyes, which I had not seen in person for 4 years, 2 months, and 14 days, scanned the lobby. They were not the eyes of the angry, idealistic college kid who had stormed out of our father's house. These eyes were different. They were patient. They were the eyes of a man who had stared at a static, sun-bleached horizon for hundreds of days. A man accustomed to precise, unadorned after-action reports. His gaze found mine, locked and held. Evan Cole, my brother. He hadn't called. He hadn't written. He had, as was his way, simply executed a plan. He returned to Ravenmore not with a parade, but as a silent insertion, and he was now standing in the heart of the enemy's camp, wearing their uniform. He began to walk toward me, his movements economical, his black, rubber-soled shoes making no sound on the polished marble. He was thinner than I remembered, all the collegiate softness carved away, leaving the hard angles I recognized from our childhood. He stopped a foot in front of me. "Avery," he said. His voice was deeper, the cadence flatter, quieter. I couldn't speak. My entire world had just tilted. My lungs, constrained by the bruised ribs, refused to draw a full breath. I was staring at my brother. A ghost returned, and my mind was racing, trying to calculate the new variables. A small, almost invisible smile touched the corner of his mouth. "You still count your breaths before you speak," he murmured. It was an old tease from a lifetime ago, when he would make me laugh before a school presentation. "Evan," I finally managed, the name feeling foreign, pulled painfully from my chest. "What? How are you here?" "Honorable discharge. End of contract," he said, his voice low. cutting off the flood of questions. Felt like picking up some private sector work. I heard G&V was hiring. His eyes flickered up to the massive plasma screen logo on the wall. Good benefits package. His gaze dropped. It moved from my eyes to my left side, where my hand was instinctively hovering, a fraction of an inch from the surface of my blazer, guarding the injury beneath. He registered the stiffness in my posture. He saw the shallow, painful way I inhaled. His eyes sharpened, not with alarm, but with clinical assessment. He processed the data. He didn't ask, "What's wrong?" Not here, not in the open. Instead, his hand went to the pocket of his tactical-style uniform trousers. He pulled out a small, black square, no bigger than a matchbox. It was a high-specification body camera, far better than the pin mic I was wearing. "This is for you," he said, pressing it into my palm. His fingers were cold. "Personal purchase, law enforcement grade, better audio, 160-degree field of view. The data is AES 256 encrypted on its own internal storage. Always have a primary and a backup." I closed my fingers around the small, dense object. You're working here? At Granite?" "Night shift," he confirmed, his voice barely a whisper. "Just cleared HR screening on Friday." He finally looked away, a flicker of dark humor in his eyes. "Sloan Vale herself signed the authorization. Apparently, they have a critical staffing shortage in overnight security. Go figure." The irony was acidic. Sloan, so focused on her multi-million-dollar janitorial fraud, so arrogant in her power, hadn't even bothered to read the full name on a low-level, third-shift security application. She saw a veteran, a cheap hire to fill a slot she had created by cutting costs. She had personally opened the door and let the Trojan horse walk right into her citadel. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice urgent, low. "Not here, not now." "Break room, 27th floor, 1500 hours," he replied. "All business. I'm doing my initial building walkthrough and systems orientation." He gave a short, formal nod, put his cap on his head, and walked away. Every inch the dutiful new guard. The next 5 hours were the longest of my life. I sat at my desk, the encrypted spreadsheet of Sloan's fraud open on one screen, the new body cam charging via a discrete USB cable under my desk. At 2:59 p.m., I was in the 27th floor break room, the one just down the hall from the North Bridge conference room. The room was empty, smelling of stale coffee and microwave lunches. I waited. At 1500 hours, precisely. The door opened, and Evan walked in. He was out of uniform, wearing jeans and a nondescript gray t-shirt, his security lanyard and keycard looped around his neck. He moved with a quiet, predatory grace. He didn't check the corners of the room. I could tell he already had. He walked straight to the microwave, put a cup of water inside, and pressed 60. He stood with his back to the door, a perfect picture of an employee on a break. "Report," he said, his voice flat, his reflection staring at me from the microwave's dark glass. I told him. I started from the beginning. The 4 years of quiet documentation, the Northbridge janitorial contract, the 4-day discrepancy in the bidding process, the circular payments through Granite Cares, the consultant fees paid out in untraceable gift cards. And then I told him about Friday. 10:42 p.m., Northbridge conference room. She kicked me in the ribs. Here. I touched my side. I got the timestamp. I got the audio. And camera 4B got the video. I braced for the old Evan, the brother who had put his fist through a wall over a stolen tuition check, the hot-headed, righteous anger that had defined him. It never came. He watched the timer on the microwave count down. He did not stiffen. He did not curse. The man who turned around when the microwave beeped was someone else entirely. His face was a mask of cold, analytical calm. Timestamp? 10:42 p.m. Audio confirms. Camera model? Bosch Autodome 7000. It's on the new network. Storage vendor? Imra Cloud Solutions. Immutable storage. Real-time off-site mirror. G located in Utah. Chain of custody? I initiated a litigation hold this morning at 09:14. I sent it to IT and General Counsel. And Sloan took the bait. 11:05 a.m. She accessed the local server and executed a delete command on the 4B directory. I have the executive access logs. She created a secondary crime, destruction of evidence, intent. A flicker of something, approval, respect, passed through his eyes. Good, he said. The assault is the leverage. The deletion is the case. You've got her on procedure. He took his cup of hot water. Your cloud file, your chain of custody on that digital wrapper is now the single most important asset. Do not download it to any G&V hardware. Keep it isolated. That is your primary. He took a sip. The rest, leave that to me. What do you mean? She thinks her executive keycard is a key, Evan said, his voice dropping even lower. She's wrong. It's a pen. Every door she opens, every elevator she calls. She's signing a witness statement. She's creating a timeline that has to match her story. You have her digital footprint. I'm on the night shift. I have access to the physical, the door systems, the alarm panels, the elevator logs. I'll get the rest. This was the new Evan, the soldier, the one who had spent 4 years in an environment where procedure wasn't just a corporate policy. It was what kept you alive. He was fluent in the language of the Judge Advocate General, the military's legal arm. He understood that you don't win by yelling. You win with paperwork. You win with verified, authenticated, and unbroken chains of evidence. He knew, with a certainty that chilled me, exactly how to let an enemy destroy themselves. He wouldn't just expose Sloan. He would hand a prosecutor a sealed, documented, and irrefutable case. He rinsed his cup and placed it in the dishwasher. He looked at me, and for 1 second, the mask of the investigator fell away, and I saw my brother. It's good to see you, Av, he said. He didn't hug me. He could see it would hurt. Instead, he just nodded, his hand briefly touching the keycard on his lanyard, a silent promise. He walked out of the break room, his footsteps silent, a new gear turning in the complex machinery of the 27th floor. I stood there, the silence of the room settling around me. The building was still a glass house, a monument to my father's weakness and Sloan's ambition, but for the first time since my mother died, for the first time since Evan walked out the door, I was no longer alone. I had backup, and he just took the night watch. Emotion is a liability. Data is a weapon. My anger was a white-hot furnace, but I couldn't use it. Anger is imprecise. Revenge is messy. What I was building was a case, cold, structural, and absolute. The pain in my ribs was no longer an injury. It was Exhibit A, a physical reminder of the objective facts. On Monday, I had sent the first, narrow litigation hold for Camera 4B. On Tuesday morning, I sent the second, broader one. This one was a net, designed to catch not just the shark, but the entire ecosystem it lived in. The email was addressed again to our general counsel, who was now legally bound to act. I CC'd the head of IT and, crucially, the account manager at Imra Cloud Solutions, our offsite data vendor. The subject was urgent, preservation of records pending governance review. I requested an immediate, full data preservation hold-on. All keycard and elevator access logs for the 27th floor, specifically the server room, from 10:00 p.m. Friday to 1:00 a.m. Saturday. All digital server access logs for GVC SEKey 01 for the same period. All contracts, invoices, and payment authorizations related to vendor code 884B, Northbridge Janitorial, for the past 36 months. All email communications from the executive HR server, Sloan's domain, containing the keywords stewardship, mandatory, volunteer, or overtime mitigation. I was no longer just a victim of assault. I was the director of compliance, officially flagging a multi-million-dollar corporation for financial malfeasance, wage theft, and destruction of evidence. I had just created a legal storm that the general counsel could not ignore without making himself an accomplice. The first piece of data came from Evan. I didn't see him. At 1:20 p.m., A text lit up the screen of the burner phone he'd given me. It was not a message. It was a photograph of a monitor from the security office. A single line of text from the system log. Access log 1017 2255 14. User S. Vale exec priv. Location 27 SRV room. Action granted. Access log 1017 2258 22. User S. Vale exec priv. Location 27 SRV room. Action exit. My heart hammered against my bruised ribs. 10:55 p.m. 13 minutes. 13 minutes after her heel had shattered my rib. She was in the server room. The audio on my watch had her laughing. You have no proof. She hadn't even waited an hour. She hadn't waited for me to leave the building. In a single, arrogant, panicked move, she had walked straight from the assault to the server room to commit a second felony, willful destruction of evidence, and Evan had the log. That night, at home, I secured my own copy. I didn't use any Granite and Veil hardware. I used my personal laptop, connecting through a secure VPN. As a compliance director, I had high-level administrative access to our third-party vendor portals. I logged into the IMRA Cloud dashboard. There it was. File 4B10172240. The video from the Northbridge conference room. It was marked with a small, red LH icon, indicating my litigation hold had been received and the file was now immutable. But next to it was another icon, one Sloan didn't know about, a small "the" symbol, delta. It meant the local copy on our server had been altered. The IMRA Cloud system didn't just back up the file, it tracked its state. Sloan's deletion at 10:55 p.m. hadn't erased the evidence. It had created a tamper-evident seal. I downloaded the pristine, original, 4.2 gigabyte file. The metadata was intact, time-stamped, encrypted, and forensically clean. I transferred it to an air-gapped external hard drive and locked it in my safe. I now possessed the original, and the server logs proved she had destroyed the copy. For the next 48 hours, I worked with a cold, focused fury. I assembled the rest of the puzzle. I pulled every email related to the mandatory volunteering. I found the original HR proposal where Sloan explicitly tied the program to cost savings from union-scale overtime for the night staff. It was, in black and white, a documented scheme for wage theft. I cross-referenced the Northbridge invoices with the Granite Cares charity gala schedule. The pattern was identical, month after month, culminating in the big event next week. A massive inflated invoice from Northbridge is paid by Granite and Veil. A large sponsorship donation from Northbridge is received by Granite Cares. A consultant fee is paid from Granite Cares' discretionary fund, a fund Sloan alone controlled. I built the final timeline. It was no longer a collection of suspicious data points. It was a narrative. 10:42 p.m. Physical assault. The Article 4 conduct violation. 10:55 p.m. Server room deletion. The felony cover-up. Ongoing. The Northbridge contract. The financial motive, fraud, kickbacks. Ongoing. The stewardship program. The secondary crime, wage theft. The assault wasn't the reason for the fraud. The fraud was the reason for the assault. She had to keep me in line, keep me cleaning floors, remind me of my place, because I was the only one in the company with the skills to see the rot she had built. Her kick was an act of managerial enforcement. Now, I needed the human element. I approached Mark and Priya separately. I didn't go as Avery, the victim. I went as the director of compliance, conducting a formal review. I called Priya into a small meeting room, one I knew had no cameras. Priya, I started, my voice level. I am conducting a review of an incident that occurred on the 27th floor last Friday. My records show you clocked out at 10:48 p.m. Did you observe any interactions in or near the Northbridge conference room just prior to your departure? I used closed-ended questions. I gave her no room to equivocate. Her face went pale. Avery, please. This is an official compliance query. Priya, Did you observe an interaction between myself and Sloane Vale? She stared at her hands. Yes. Did you observe physical contact? A long, terrible silence. She whispered, Yes. I saw her. I saw her kick you. Avery, I have kids. I have a mortgage. She will ruin me. I am not asking you to testify, I said, my voice softening for a second. I am only asking you to confirm what you saw for my report, which you have. Thank you. That's all. I had the same conversation with Mark. He was more terrified, stammering that he thought I slipped, but couldn't be sure. It didn't matter. I had one solid yes and one maybe. It was enough to corroborate the video. That night, I told Evan about the interviews. They're terrified, I said, pacing my living room. Sloane will destroy them. His voice was calm over the secure line. Don't promise to protect them. You can't, not personally. Protect them with the policy, the official one. He was right. I pulled up the Granite and Vale Whistleblower Protection Policy, another document I had helped draft. It guaranteed anonymity and protection from retaliation for any employee who reported a violation to the Ethics Committee of the Board of Directors. This was the final piece. I spent all of Wednesday drafting the most important document of my life. It was a 20-page confidential report, addressed to the 3 independent members of the Board of Directors who comprise the Ethics Committee. It was not a letter, it was a legal brief. Section 1. Violation of Article 4, Code of Conduct. Summary of the physical assault. Section 2. Violation of 18 U.S. Code 01519. Summary of the destruction of evidence, supported by server and keycard logs. Section 3. Conflict of interest and financial malfeasance. Detailed breakdown of the Northbridge Granite Cares fraud. Section 4. Wage and hour violations. Analysis of the stewardship program. Appendix A. Chain of custody form for video file 4B10 1 2224S. Appendix B. Corroboration from multiple confidential witnesses, citing the whistleblower policy. My conclusion was not a request for justice. It was a demand for a corporate action. I formally requested an emergency session of the Ethics Committee to be held within 48 hours, and prior to the Granite Cares Gala, I demanded Sloane's immediate suspension, pending investigation, to prevent further destruction of evidence or retaliation against witnesses. I was about to hit send when the whispers started. It began on Thursday morning. The air in the office was different. People looked at me, then quickly looked away. The general counsel, who had been avoiding me all week, suddenly appeared in the hallway, deep in conversation with another partner. They both glanced at me. Then I heard it, from a group of junior analysts by the coffee machine. No, I heard her brother just showed up. The one who went military? Yeah, working security. I know, weird. Jenny in HR said Sloane is very concerned for her, that Avery's been unstable since he came back, making bizarre accusations. I stopped. My blood ran cold. Sloane was counterattacking. She had felt the net tightening, the litigation holds, the general counsel's nervous twitching. She couldn't fight me on the facts, so she was attacking my sanity. It was brilliant. It was diabolical. She was preemptively painting me as the hysterical woman, the traumatized sister, lashing out at her kind, concerned stepmother because her unstable brother had reappeared. She was discrediting me before I had even spoken. I walked back to my desk, the whispers following me. I sat down. I looked at the email I had drafted, the report, the video evidence, the server logs, the financial charts. She thought she was planting a rumor. She had no idea I was holding a signed confession. I opened the email, confirmed the addresses for the Ethics Committee. My finger hovered over the mouse. Sloane was spinning a story about my mental instability. I was about to give her objective, actionable reality. I clicked send. The bomb I sent to the Ethics Committee on Thursday morning did not result in an immediate, public explosion. Instead, it triggered a series of silent, subterranean tremors. The committee, comprised of 3 independent directors who valued their 6-figure retainers above all else, was forced to act. They were terrified of the legal exposure my report represented, but they were also terrified of Sloane. So they did what all weak-willed, overpaid boards do. They compromised. They opened an inquiry. Sloane's counteroffensive was swift, brutal, and in its own way, a work of art. On Friday morning, exactly 1 week after the assault, I received an email. It was not from Sloane. She was too smart to put her name on it. It was from her deputy, Richard Hastings, the man whose signature I was beginning to see in my nightmares. Subject: temporary reassignment pending internal review. The email was a masterpiece of corporate doublespeak. It noted the serious, unsubstantiated concerns I had raised, which had created a potentially disruptive atmosphere. It mentioned Sloane's deep personal concern for my recent emotional distress. Therefore, to ensure a neutral environment and to protect all parties, meaning to protect her, I was being temporarily relieved of my duties as Director of Compliance. I was being demoted. I was to vacate my office on the 27th floor immediately. My new assignment? Facilities Logistics Support. I was to report to the sub-basement. It was a public execution, a humiliation designed to shatter my credibility. She was taking my title, my office, my access to the compliance servers, and my dignity. She was making the rumor of my instability a self-fulfilling prophecy, casting me as the hysterical woman banished to the boiler room. I was ordered to turn in my executive keycard. At the security desk, a guard who wouldn't meet my eyes took my sleek, graphite-colored card. He handed me a new one in return. It was thick, off-white plastic, with a faded blue stripe. It was heavy with the greasy patina of long-term use. "This'll get you into the sub-basement, the freight elevators, and the custodial closets," he mumbled, already turning away. I held the card in my palm. The key to the kingdom. I had to physically restrain myself from smiling. Sloane thought she was putting me in a cage. She had no idea she had just handed me the one key I didn't have. She, in her infinite, blinding arrogance, had just given me an all-access pass to the crime scene. If you want to find the real dirt, I thought, the irony a sweet, sharp taste in my mouth, you have to get into the chemical closet. The sub-basement was another world. The air was cold, smelling of concrete, ozone from the central air handlers, and the biting scent of industrial bleach. My new desk was a rust-stained metal table shoved against a cinder-block wall. Directly across from pallets of paper towels and 55-gallon drums of floor wax. My new supervisor, a man who clearly hadn't been told the political subtext of my arrival, just grunted and handed me a clipboard. "Inventory," he said. "Check the manifests against the pallets. Don't mess up the count." I spent the next 3 hours in heaven. I was surrounded by the physical evidence of the Northbridge contract. I cross-referenced the shipping manifests, pallet after pallet of cleaning supplies, all billed at that same 40% markup. And then I found it, tucked in the back of Bay 2, behind the freight elevator, a new shipment that had arrived late last night. The manifest read, "Crate 4 of 6. Vendor, Northbridge Janitorial. Contents, promotional samples, G&V Cares. A box of lemon-scented disinfectant. The manifest listed its weight as 50 pounds. I put my hand on it. It felt almost empty. I took the box cutter from my new desk. I slit the packing tape. The scent of fake lemon hit me. The box contained a single layer of 12 plastic bottles, just as advertised, but beneath them, the cardboard bottom felt wrong. It was too thick. I dug my fingernails under the edge and lifted. A false bottom. And underneath it, a thick, 9x12 manila envelope. It was heavy. It had no postage, no mailing label, just 2 initials scribbled in the corner, S.V. My hands were steady. I slid open the unsealed flap. It wasn't cash. Cash is for amateurs. Cash is bulky, traceable, and useless for the kinds of things Sloane bought. This was cleaner. It was a stack, maybe 50 deep, of prepaid, high-limit gift cards, Visa, American Express, Corporate logos, untraceable, anonymous. This was the consultant fee. This was the kickback. This was how Northbridge paid their platinum sponsor. They delivered her bribe money in a box of fake lemon-scented chemicals, delivered to the sub-basement, where no one from the 27th floor would ever look. I immediately texted Evan on the burner phone. Sub-basement, Bay 2. I found the delivery system. The package is here. His reply came back in 30 seconds. Don't take it. Mark it. We don't want the package. We want the hand that receives it. I pulled a small, clear vial from my purse. It was a habit Evan had drilled into me, something he'd brought back from his forensic investigation training. A tiny container of UV detection powder, odorless, invisible to the naked eye. I carefully, meticulously, dusted the powder along the inside flap of the manila envelope and along the plastic edges of the top 3 gift cards. Whoever opened this, whoever reached inside, their fingers would be contaminated. Under a blacklight, their hands would glow like a phantom. I placed the envelope back. I replaced the false bottom. I resealed the box. I placed it exactly where I had found it. My second text to Evan. Package is tagged, Pallet 4B, by the freight elevator. The handoff must happen down here. His reply. I know. The camera in that corridor, SBC02, has a blind spot. It's an old model. The last guard never fixed it. A pause. I fixed it last night. I also rerouted the live feed to my own terminal in the security office. I'll get the handoff. You get the signature. The signature. I went back to my desk and pulled the receiving logbook for the night before. Time, 9:14 p.m. Vendor, Northbridge. Driver, J. Allen, and the signature in the received by and G&V column, a fast, arrogant scrawl. Ara Hastings. Richard Hastings, Sloane's deputy, the man who had emailed me my demotion. He wasn't just her attack dog. He was her bagman. He was the one who came down to the sub-basement, signed for the chemicals, and personally retrieved the envelope for his boss. The entire HR department was a criminal enterprise. I took a high-resolution photograph of the logbook, another link in the chain. I was sitting at my metal desk, the smell of bleach in my nostrils. When the all-company email arrived, it lit up the screen of my ancient temporary monitor. Subject: Get ready to celebrate. The Granite Cares Gala is next week. It was a burst of nauseatingly cheerful corporate propaganda, a night of dinner, dancing, and celebrating our community, and there, at the top of the email, the presenting partner, our partner in philanthropy, Northbridge Janitorial. The email included a schedule of events: 7:00 p.m., cocktails, 8:00 p.m., dinner, 8:45 p.m., a keynote speech from our CEO, my father, 9:00 p.m., a special presentation on corporate citizenship and giving back by our very own Sloane Vale. She was going to get on stage. She was going to stand in a spotlight in front of every major investor and journalist in Ravenmore and talk about ethics while the bagman was picking up her bribes from the chemical closet. The audacity was magnificent. It was perfect. I stood up. I brushed the concrete dust from my suit trousers. I took the service elevator, my elevator, up to the 27th floor. My new keycard didn't work on the glass doors to the executive suite. I was locked out. So I stood there, in the hallway, a pariah in my own company, until someone saw me. Richard Hastings saw me first. He walked over to the door, a smirk playing on his lips, enjoying the spectacle. He was, I realized, about to go downstairs and pick up his envelope. "Can I help you, Avery?" he said, his voice loud enough for the entire HR department to hear. "You seem to be lost. The sub-basement is down." "I need to see Sloane," I said, my voice flat, dead. Sloane emerged from her corner office. She glided over, her face a mask of practiced, professional concern. "Avery," she said, her voice dripping with pity, "are you adjusting to your new responsibilities? I know this transition must be difficult for you." "I saw the email about the gala," I said. My voice was steady. "I know you're speaking on corporate citizenship." Sloane blinked. This was not the part where the broken, unstable woman cries. "I'd like to help," I said. A flicker of genuine confusion crossed her face. "Help?" "I was in compliance for 6 years," I said, my voice carrying. I thought it would send a powerful message, a message of family and teamwork, especially, I added, lowering my voice just a bit. Given all the rumors, I thought it would show unity. If I introduced you, if I got on stage and said a few words about what corporate ethics really means to us, from the ground up. The calculation in her eyes was instant. The rumor of my instability was useful, but the ethics committee was still sniffing around. A public fight was messy, but this was a public surrender. This was the demoted, hysterical stepdaughter, broken and contrite, forced to climb on stage and publicly kiss the ring. It was better than firing me. It was a public execution, and I was volunteering to load the gun. Her thin lips curved into a triumphant smile. "Avery," she said, her voice overflowing with false warmth as she placed a hand on the glass door between us. "That is the most wonderful idea I have heard all day. A true sign that you're on the path to healing. Yes, I will clear it with the event staff myself. You can have 5 minutes. 5 minutes, just before my presentation." She turned to her deputy. "Richard, be a dear and find Avery an elevator, won't you? She's clearly lost her way." Hastings' smirk was back. "Right this way." As I walked back to the service elevator, my father stepped out of the executive lift. He must have been summoned. He saw me. He walked over, his face a grim gray mask of anxiety. "Avery," he said, his voice a low growl. He grabbed my arm. "Sloan just told me. You're speaking at the gala." "Yes?" "Don't," he hissed. "Don't you dare. Don't make trouble. This instability, this isn't you. It's not good for the company. Sloan is willing to forgive and forget. She is giving you a chance to make this right. For God's sake, child, just be a team player. For me." "Forgive me?" The word echoed in the space between my ribs, where the bruise had faded to a sickly yellow. He stood there, my father, the CEO, a hollow man in a $1,000 suit, begging me to protect the woman who had assaulted me and was actively looting his company. I pulled my arm from his grip. I looked at him, not as a daughter, but as a compliance officer. "Don't worry, Dad," I said, my voice as cold and quiet as the sub-basement floor. "I'm not making trouble." I pressed the call button for the freight elevator. The doors opened with a heavy, mechanical groan. "I'm just cleaning up," I said, stepping inside. "It's my job now." The counterattack came on Wednesday morning, 2 days before the gala. It was faster and more brutal than I had anticipated. I was in the sub-basement, cataloging a pallet of industrial-strength floor buffers, when my phone rang. It wasn't the burner. It was my official company cell. The caller ID read, HR, Internal Affairs. "Avery Cole?" The voice was cold, unfamiliar. "This is she. You are required to report to conference room 3C on the 12th floor immediately. Bring all company property." The line clicked dead. This was not the 27th floor. The 12th floor was a neutral zone, a designated abattoir where HR processed terminations. I walked to the freight elevator, my heart a cold, steady drum against my ribs. They were moving. Sloan had found out about the envelope. Conference room 3C was small, windowless, and smelled of stale air. Richard Hastings was there, his face a mask of smug procedural righteousness. Beside him sat the general counsel, Marcus, looking gray and ill, and a woman I didn't know, from internal security. "Avery," Marcus began, his eyes fixed on the table. "We are here to discuss a serious matter. On Friday last, a package containing high-value corporate gift cards was delivered to the facility's depot." Hastings cut in, his voice sharp. "Those cards, intended for our partners at the Granite Cares Gala, have been reported stolen. The entire envelope is missing from the supply crate." I remained perfectly still. I said nothing. We have reviewed the security footage from the sub-basement corridor. Camera SBC02. Hastings continued, pushing a tablet across the table. We'd like you to review it. He pressed play. The screen lit up with the grainy black and white footage Evan had fixed. It showed me, last Friday, walking up to the correct pallet. It showed me opening the North Bridge box. It showed me lifting the false bottom, discovering the manila envelope, and opening it. It showed me looking inside. And then, the video cut to black. It was an expert frame-up, a perfect, damnable edit. It showed me finding the prize, and nothing else. The envelope was time-stamped as logged by you. Hastings lied, his eyes glinting. It is now gone. The edit you see is due to a system glitch on that old camera. That's a lie, I said, my voice quiet. That footage has been intentionally edited. I want to see the full, unedited file and its digital chain of custody. That won't be necessary, Marcus said, finally looking up. His face was slick with sweat. He was a weak man, trapped. Avery, effective immediately. You are suspended from Granite and Vale. Pending a criminal investigation. You are to be escorted from the building. Your keycard and all access privileges are revoked. The internal security woman stood up. This was it, the final move. She was discrediting me, firing me, and framing me for a felony. All 48 hours before the gala, I would be a disgruntled, thieving employee, and my report to the ethics committee would be seen as a desperate, fabricated act of revenge. I stood up slowly. I unclipped my new blue stripe ID card and placed it on the table. You are making a mistake, I said. Get her out, Hastings ordered. I was escorted out of the conference room, through the lobby, and pushed unceremoniously onto the street. The glass doors of Granite and Vale slid shut behind me. I was out. I walked to the corner, out of sight of the lobby cameras. I pulled out the burner phone. I sent a single text to Evan. Now. 2 things happened at the exact same moment. 100 feet above me, Evan Cole, in his crisp security uniform, walked into the general counsel's private office. Marcus was still there, wiping his face with a handkerchief. Sir, Evan said, his voice respectful, I'm on my walkthrough. I believe you need to see this. He placed a single, glossy 8x10 photograph on Marcus's desk. It was a shot from the sub-basement, taken under a portable UV blacklight. It showed Richard Hastings, his back to the camera, his hands plunged deep inside the promotional samples box. His fingers, his palms, and his cuffs were glowing a brilliant, ghostly blue-white. This was taken at 10:17 p.m. last night, sir, Evan said, his voice flat. Mr. Hastings appears to have contaminated himself with a forensic powder, a powder I placed on an envelope in that box as part of a compliance-sanctioned integrity test. That envelope, as you know, has been reported stolen. I believe this is what you'd call objective, actionable evidence. At that exact same moment, from a secure laptop at a Starbucks 2 blocks away, I hit send on an email. It was not a request. It was a digital torpedo. It was addressed to the 3 members of the ethics committee, and I CC'd Marcus, the general counsel. Subject: formal notification, active felony in progress and imminent corporate risk. Request for emergency hearing. The body of the email was simple. You received my preliminary report on Thursday. This morning, Sloan Vale and Richard Hastings retaliated by framing me for felony theft, using fabricated video evidence. They are actively attempting to silence a whistleblower ahead of the Granite Cares Gala. This is no longer a simple ethics complaint. It is an active criminal conspiracy. Attached, you will find Exhibit A, the full, unedited, time-stamped, and forensically sealed IMRA Cloud video file of my assault by Sloan Vale. Exhibit B, the server and keycard logs, proving Sloan Vale's deletion of the local file 13 minutes later. Exhibit C, the full unedited video from camera SBC02, showing me placing the UV powder and returning the envelope to the box. Exhibit D, the attached UV photographs of Richard Hastings' hands, taken last night by G&V Security. Exhibit E, the full financial audit tracing the Northbridge Granite Cares kickback scheme. I demand an emergency hearing, today, before these individuals can destroy any more evidence or further damage the company and its investors at the gala. Marcus's world imploded. He was now in possession of photographic proof of Hastings' theft, and an email from a suspended employee showing that the entire board of directors also had that proof. He was an accomplice to a frame-up, and the evidence of that was now in the board's inbox. He had no choice. The emergency meeting was called for 3 p.m. The boardroom was electric with a silent, toxic tension. Sloan and Hastings were on one side of the long, polished table. My father sat at the end, looking like a ghost. I sat on the other side, alone. Evan stood by the door, a silent, uniformed observer. The 3 members of the ethics committee were on a giant video screen, their faces grim. "Ms. Vale," the chairman began, his voice tinny, "we have 2 wildly divergent narratives. Your team has accused Ms. Cole of theft. She has accused you of a laundry list of felonies." "It's a pathetic fantasy," Sloan said, her voice smooth as silk. "Avery is unwell. I have protected her, tried to help her. Her brother's sudden, strange reappearance has triggered a severe emotional breakdown. She has fabricated this entire story. She then played her trump card. In fact, she has been unstable for some time. I have a witness, Mark." Mark, from underwriting, was brought in. He was visibly shaking. He looked at me, then at Sloan, then at the floor. "Mr. Mark," Sloan said gently, "please tell the committee what you told me about what you saw in the conference room last Friday." He read from a script. His voice was a monotone. I was in the hall. I saw Avery. She was alone. She was upset, yelling to herself. Then she threw herself. She ran, and she threw herself, hard, against the corner of the conference table. Then she collapsed. She said, "I'll get her for this. I'll get Sloan." Sloan leaned back, a look of profound sadness on her face. "See? It's a tragedy. She's self-harmed and is now projecting, this is a matter for a doctor, not the board." It was brilliant. A perfect, simple, she's crazy defense. Hastings' glowing hands and the assault video were now just artifacts of a disturbed mind. It was my word against her witness. I didn't speak. I just looked at Evan. Evan stepped forward, holding a laptop. "Mr. Chairman, committee members, may I present new data?" Sloan scoffed. More fantasies from the night watchman? Evan ignored her. Plugging his laptop into the main monitor, a complex, 3D wireframe of the Northbridge conference room appeared. The 27th floor was part of the smart building retrofit in Q4, Evan said, his voice the calm, steady voice of a technician. The entire room, including the floor and walls, is equipped with piezoelectric impact sensors. They are designed to monitor structural integrity and vibration. He typed a command. "I am now loading the sensor data for 10:42 p.m., Friday, October 17th, the time of the alleged incident." A red dot appeared on the 3D diagram, right where the conference table was. "This," Evan said, "is the impact that Mr. Mark just described, a body hitting the table. The sensors would register a low, broad impact, approximately 50 to 60 pounds per square inch, distributed over this area." He paused, then typed another command. A second, blindingly bright dot appeared on the screen. It was not on the table. It was 3 feet to the left and about 18 inches lower. "And this," Evan said, "is the actual impact registered by the sensors at 10:42:19 p.m. He clicked, and a new data box opened. Impact event, 10:42:19, location, 27 NRTH 4, force, 1,187 psi. 1,187 pounds per square inch, Evan said, his voice resonating in the dead silent room. A focused, high velocity, penetrating impact. The kinetic signature is not consistent with a body hitting a table. It is, however, a perfect match for the force generated by a 120-pound person, striking with the reinforced metal tip of a stiletto heel. Silence. My father stared at the screen, his mouth open. Sloane's face was chalk white. She had been beaten by a censor. Hastings looked like he was going to be sick. The chairman of the ethics committee cleared his throat. He was trapped. The gala was in 2 days. The company's biggest clients, its investors, the press. They were all coming. A public execution of the CEO's wife and head of HR would crater the stock. Thank you. Mr. Cole. In light of this, disturbing data, the committee is ruling as follows. Mr. Hastings, you are suspended, effective immediately, pending a full criminal investigation. Ms. Vale, your executive privileges and all authority over all corporate funds, especially Granite Cares, are frozen. You will cooperate fully with our internal audit. Sloane started to speak, but he cut her off. This meeting is over. We will reconvene after the gala to determine a final course of action. The screen went black. Hastings was escorted out by security. Evans' security. Not the internal team. My father fled the room without looking at me. It was just me and Sloane, left in the silent boardroom. I stood up and gathered my things. Her mask of composure was gone. Her face was a twisted knot of pure, unadulterated venom. She waited until I was at the door. "You think you've won?" she hissed, her voice a low vibration. "You haven't. I'm still on that stage. My sponsors from Northbridge, are still at the head table. The gala is mine. I'm still giving the keynote on ethics." She laughed, a short, sharp, ugly sound. "And you? You're still just the crazy girl in the basement. What are you going to say in your pathetic little 5-minute speech? Avery? What could you possibly say?" I turned and looked at her, standing there in her $1,000 suit, a predator trapped in a cage of her own making, but not yet understanding it. I didn't say a word. I just let her watch me walk away. The string was pulled tight. It was 2 days until the gala. It was time to see what would snap. The grand ballroom of the Marrowgate Hotel was suffocating in a sea of blue uplighting and self-congratulation. It was a room built to project power. 3-story ceilings, cascading crystal chandeliers, and a 1,000-pound ice sculpture of the Granite and Vale logo melting slowly in the center of the cocktail reception. This was Sloane's masterpiece. The room was packed. Investors in tuxedos, local politicians sipping champagne, journalists from the Ravenmore Financial Press with predatory smiles, and at the head table, Table 1, sat the executives from Northbridge Janitorial, looking puffed up and proud, seated next to my father. And everywhere, cameras, not just the event photographers, a live feed. Granite and Vale was streaming this, a testament to their transparency and community engagement, broadcasting their corporate virtue directly to their investor relations portal. Thousands of people were watching. I stood in the back of the ballroom, near a service entrance, wearing the same simple black suit I'd worn to my compliance review. I was invisible. I was logistics. I was the sub-basement. I saw Evan. He wasn't in the crowd. He was working. He was part of the AV crew, dressed in the hotel's all-black technical uniform, a headset on, his face impassive as he checked inputs on the main soundboard. He was just another tech, checking a checklist, but I knew what he was checking. His own personally owned, high-spec laptop was patched directly into the backup AV feed, the feed that could be switched to the main projectors in less than a second. His body cam, which he wore on his chest, was currently feeding a live, high-definition view of the control board itself, a fail-safe in case someone tried to cut the power. He was a one-man army of procedural integrity, hidden in plain sight. The lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the main stage. Sloane walked out to a wave of applause. She was incandescent, wearing a silver-sequined gown that looked like liquid armor. She glowed. She owned the room. "Thank you. Thank you." Her voice was warm, vibrating with practiced sincerity. Welcome to the Granite Cares Gala, a night where we prove that a company doesn't just have a balance sheet, it has a heart. She spoke for 10 minutes, a river of weaponized platitudes about community, family, and giving back. My father watched her, his face a mask of adoration. He was a fool, in love with his own executioner. And we cannot do this alone, Sloane continued, beaming. Our partners are our strength, and no partner has a bigger heart or a more passionate commitment to our community than our presenting sponsor. Please, a huge round of applause for the CEO of Northbridge Janitorial. The Northbridge table stood up, basking in the applause. Sloane blew them a kiss. And now, Sloane said, her smile widening, we have a very special presentation. We talk a lot about teamwork at Granite and Vale, about humility. We believe that to lead, one must also know how to serve. As a symbol of that unity, I have asked my stepdaughter, Avery Cole, from our own facility's logistics team, to come up and say a few words on what corporate ethics means from the ground up. She was laying it on thick. This was my public execution, the unstable girl from the basement, brought on stage to prove her loyalty and subservience. All eyes turned to me. A second spotlight found me at the back of the room. The walk from the service door to the stage was the longest 100 yards of my life. My ribs ached with a dull, phantom throb. I could feel the pity, the condescension, the whispers. That's her? The one who... I walked up the small set of stairs. Sloane was waiting for me. She enveloped me in a one-armed hug, a reptilian embrace for the cameras, her microphone picking up her whisper. Don't disappoint, dear, she hissed in my ear. She handed me the microphone and stepped back, her arms crossed, a benevolent queen watching her subject. I stood at the podium. I was shaking, but not from fear, from adrenaline. I looked out at the sea of faces, at the red live light of the main camera. I placed a small, simple USB drive on the podium's surface, a prop. Good evening, I said. My voice was amplified, filling the massive room. It was steady. It sounded colder than I expected. Sloane is right. We talk a lot about teamwork, about our internal stewardship. We talk about humility. I looked down at the prop USB. But ethics, true corporate ethics, isn't about the grand gestures. It's not about the galas or the million-dollar donations. I looked up, straight into the lens of the main camera. Ethics, I said, begins with the small things. It begins with cleaning up a simple spot. And more importantly, it's about what happens when you watch someone try to cover that spot up. In the back of the room, Evan hit the first cue. The massive 20-foot screen behind my head, the screen that was supposed to be showing a looping Granite Cares logo, snapped to black. A collective gasp, a murmur. Sloane's smile twitched. Then, the screen lit up. It was not a logo. It was high-definition security footage. The feed from Camera 4B, the Northbridge conference room. The audience saw me, on my hands and knees, cleaning. They saw Sloane, in her sharp stiletto heels, standing over me. Can't handle one spot? The voice on the audio was my own, from the lapel mic, crystal clear, and then the audience watched, in horrified, pin-drop silence, as Sloane Vale, our head of human resources, our heart of the company, drew back her leg and kicked me, hard, in the ribs. The sound of the impact, amplified by the mic, echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. A woman at the front table screamed. Avery! My father's voice, a horrified roar from his chair. What is this? Sloane shrieked, rushing the podium. Turn it off! Someone in AV! Turn that off! But Evan was locked in. The feed was his. The screen split. On the left, the video of the kick played again, in slow motion. On the right, data flashed up. Timestamp, 10:42:19 p.m. Friday, OCT 17. Impact sensor, 1,187 psi. Signature, stiletto heel. That, I said into the microphone, my voice a blade cutting through the chaos. is objective, actionable evidence of an Article 4 Code of Conduct violation, but the spot doesn't end there. The screen changed. Keycard log, 10:55:14 p.m. User, S. Vale. Location, 27 SRV room. Server, log, 10:56:02 p.m. User, S. Vale. Action, delete. Cam archive, 4B. That, I said, my voice rising, is the felony of evidence destruction, 13 minutes after the assault. Sloane was clawing at the podium, trying to get the microphone. She's lying. It's fabricated. It's deep-faked. And who, I continued, pushing the microphone just out of her reach, helped her? The screen changed again. A new video. The black and white feed from the sub-basement. It showed me. Planting the envelope. The video didn't cut. It played on, showing me reseal the box and walk away. Then, the timecode jumped forward. 10:17 p.m. Tuesday. August 21. Richard Hastings appeared on screen. He looked around, opened the box, took the envelope, and slid it into his jacket. "Sloane!" he yelled from the audience. The final image flashed, the 8x10 photograph Evan had taken. Hastings' hands plunged into the box, glowing a sickly, bright blue under the UV light. "That," I said, "is the conspiracy, but one question remains. Why? Why all the trouble?" Sloane had frozen. Her face was a mask of chalky, primal terror. She was looking at the Northbridge table. The CEO of Northbridge was already halfway out of his chair, heading for the exit. "Turn it off!" my father bellowed, running toward the stage. "The money," I said, as Evan hit the final cue. The screen changed to a simple, brutal flowchart. I had built it myself. Granite and Vale, 2.2 m, inflated contract. Northbridge, janitorial. Northbridge, janitorial, 500K, sponsorship. Granite Cares, 1.7 m, consultant fees. Prepaid gift cards. And at the bottom of the screen, the final exhibit, a copy of an email from Sloane Vale authorizing the consultant withdrawal, her digital signature, stark and undeniable. The room was in absolute pandemonium. Cell phones were up, recording, the live feed was still broadcasting. The journalists were running, not walking, to the doors, presumably to their satellite trucks. My father stopped dead at the foot of the stairs, his face ashen, staring at the flowchart. He finally understood. He hadn't been married. He'd been embezzled. In the middle of the room, I saw them, the 3 members of the ethics committee. They stood up as one. Their faces weren't just angry, they were terrified. They were on camera, at the gala, and this had just happened on their watch. They had been compromised. "This is a lie!" Sloane screamed, lunging for me, but Evan was already off the tech platform. He was moving, fast. He and 2 other uniformed G&V security guards he had personally hired, intercepted her before she could touch me. "Sloane Vale," Evan said, his voice quiet but amplified by my microphone, as he took her arm in a professional, non-violent control hold. "You are being detained pending the arrival of the Ravenmore PD." "You can't do this to me!" she shrieked, her silver dress tearing at the seam. "The company will be ruined." "The company," I said, my voice ringing out, clear and final, "will be cleaned. That's the part of the corporate charter you never bothered to read. Sloane." I looked directly at the 3 standing members of the Ethics Committee. "I call your attention to Article 6, Section 2. The Executive Compensation Clawback Clause, the one I drafted myself. It states that any officer of the company found to have committed a verified act of fraud or physical violence on company property forfeits all salary, bonuses, and vested stock options for the 24 months preceding the event." I tapped the prop USB drive on the podium. "The evidence is here. It is also with the SEC, the IRS, and the District Attorney's Office. You kicked me for 1 spot, and in doing so, you just gave back every single cent." Sloane let out a sound of pure, animalistic despair. It was the sound of a billion-dollar empire evaporating in a single moment. I let the microphone drop from my hand. It hit the podium with a loud thud that echoed through the silent, ruined ballroom. The show was over. There was no applause, only the sound of 1,000 smartphones recording, 1,000 quiet gasps, and the frantic shuffling of 100 pairs of expensive shoes heading for the exits. The gala was over. The brand was shattered. The family was a lie. Broadcast live on the Investor Relations portal. Evan did not put Sloane in handcuffs. His team was professional, quiet, and firm. As they flanked her, escorting her from the stage, another of Evan's hand-picked guards passed a handheld UV blacklight wand over her hands and the sequined fabric of her dress. A silent, damning scan for the benefit of the ethics committee members who were watching. Mouths agape. Even from the stage, I could see it. A faint, ghostly blue-white residue blooming on her fingertips. A spectral stain of her greed. She didn't shriek or fight anymore. She was a black hole of shock, her silver gown a collapsing star. The chairman of the ethics committee, a man named Henderson, whose face was now the color of old parchment, did not wait. He strode to the stage, flanked by the other two members, and took the microphone I had dropped. He was not speaking to the fleeing guests. He was speaking to the live feed, to the regulators, to the market that would open in 12 hours. This is an official statement from the independent directors of the board of Granite and Vale Capital, he announced, his voice shaking but firm. Effective immediately, by unanimous emergency vote of the Ethics Committee. Sloane Vale is suspended from all duties and formally removed from her position as head of human resources and as a corporate officer, pending criminal investigation. Richard Hastings is terminated for cause. The full, unedited dossier of evidence presented here tonight will be turned over to the office of the Ravenmore District Attorney and the Securities and Exchange Commission before sunrise. We are taking immediate and decisive action. The fallout was instantaneous. Before Sloane was even in the back of a police car, my burner phone buzzed with news alerts. Northbridge janitorial issue statement. We are shocked and appalled by the allegations. Severing all ties with Granite and Vale. Cooperating fully with authorities. They were cutting her loose, trying to save themselves. They wouldn't. NASDAQ announces pre-market trading halt for ticker GVC. The company was now a biohazard, sealed off from the market to prevent a full-blown panic sell-off. My father found me as I was walking off the stage. The chaos swirled around us, but for a moment, we were in a pocket of profound, terrible silence. He looked a decade older. The CEO's confident mask was gone, leaving only the face of a bewildered, broken man. His hands were trembling. "Avery," he whispered, his voice ragged. "The money, the contracts, the kick." He couldn't even say the word. Why? Why didn't you just come to me? Why didn't you tell me? I looked at him, at the man who had signed every document Sloane put in front of him, the man who had begged me not to make trouble, the man who had chosen blissful ignorance over his own daughter. There was no anger left, only a vast, cold clarity. "I did tell you, Dad," I said, my voice even. "For 6 years, I told you in compliance memos, I told you in risk assessments, I told you in the corporate governance charter. I spoke to you in the only language this company is supposed to understand." I paused, letting the words sink into the space between us. "It's not my fault you weren't listening." He had no answer. He simply sagged, a puppet with its strings cut. The ethics committee found me by the ruined ice sculpture. Henderson, the chairman, looked at me with new eyes, not as a problem to be managed, but as a solution. "Ms. Cole," he began, his tone now one of grave respect. "The board is in uncharted territory. We have a leadership vacuum, a crisis of confidence. We need someone to stop the bleeding, someone who knows where all the bodies are buried." "You need a new chief compliance officer," I stated. It wasn't a question. "We need you," he confirmed. "Acting chief compliance officer for the entire global enterprise, effective immediately. Name your terms." He expected me to ask for money. For power. He still didn't understand. My terms are not for me, I said. They are for the company. 1. You will fund and implement a new, fully independent, and truly anonymous whistleblower protection program, managed by a third-party firm. My first act will be to select that firm. Henderson nodded. Done. 2. You will authorize a complete, forensic, top-to-bottom independent audit of every contract, every vendor, and every charitable donation for the last 5 years. No department is exempt, not even the CEO's office. I glanced over at my father, who was now being spoken to by a grim-faced lawyer. Henderson followed my gaze. Understood, he said. Done. Then I accept, I said. The next hour was a blur of police statements and legal consultations. I saw Evan in a quiet corner of the lobby, speaking with Marcus, the now terrified general counsel. Evan was handing over a single, sealed, evidence-grade hard drive. It contained everything: the original video files, the server logs, the chain of custody documentation, his own security reports. His part was done. He had been the investigator, the technician, the silent guardian of the evidence. Now, it was in the hands of the lawyers and the DAs. He caught my eye across the room. He walked over, his face unreadable. He unclipped the small body camera from his uniform's chest pocket. It was the one he had given me, the one that had recorded his view of the AV board. He held it for a moment, then set it down on a marble-top table between us. It was a gesture of finality, like a soldier laying down his rifle after the battle is won. Night shift's over, he said. What now? I asked. Now, he said, a ghost of the brother I remembered in his eyes. We go get a beer, a cheap one, somewhere no one wears a tie. Before I could answer, a hesitant voice called my name. Avery? It was Priya, the analyst from logistics, the one who had seen the kick and turned away. Her face was pale, her eyes filled with a mixture of shame and awe. I wanted to say, I'm sorry, she stammered. I saw what she did, in the conference room. I saw it, and I was a coward. I said nothing. I looked at her, at this woman who had been trapped in the same culture of fear as everyone else. I felt a flicker of something, not pity, but understanding. Forgiveness, however, was a luxury. The case had to be ironclad. Thank you, Priya, I said, my voice softer than I'd intended, but my words were pure procedure. I appreciate that. Marcus is taking witness statements over there. Tell him what you just told me, then sign it. Her eyes widened, then she nodded, a look of resolve hardening her features. Yes, okay, I will. She walked away, no longer a bystander, but a witness. The final act of the night happened not in the ballroom, but across the company's entire digital nervous system. At 11:47 p.m., an email was sent to all 5,000 employees of Granite and Vale, from the office of the chairman of the board. Subject: an important update on corporate governance and leadership. It announced the immediate termination of Sloan Vale and Richard Hastings. It announced my appointment as acting chief compliance officer. It announced the suspension of stock trading, the independent audit, and the creation of a new, confidential ethics hotline. It was a corporate amputation, performed in public. I left the hotel with Evan just after midnight. The reporters were gone. The police cars were gone. There was only the quiet hum of the city and the cleanup crews disassembling the stage where my life, and the company, had been irrevocably altered. As we stood on the curb, waiting for a cab, I thought of the 27th floor. I pictured the small nameplate holder outside Sloan's corner office. I imagined a maintenance worker, following the orders of the board, sliding out the engraved plastic strip that read Sloan Vale, head of human resources. In the sudden, profound quiet of the ruined gala, I could almost hear it, the sharp, percussive click-clack of her stiletto heels, walking down the marble hallway for the last time. But this time, the sound wasn't menacing, it was hollow. It was the sound of her power, her ambition, her entire fraudulent empire, fading into nothing. It was the sound of ethics, after a long and brutal absence, finally returning to the building. It was a week later. The storm had passed, leaving behind the strange, sterile calm that follows a hurricane. The markets had reopened, our stock stabilizing after a terrifying plunge. The DA's office had unsealed the first wave of indictments. My father had taken a leave of absence. The company was bleeding, but the hemorrhage had been stopped. I didn't go to my new office on the 27th floor, the one with Sloane's nameplate freshly removed. Not yet. Instead, I took the elevator to the floor where it had all begun. The Northbridge conference room was empty. The lights were on low, casting a soft, forgiving glow. The glass walls, which had once felt like a cage, now seemed to just be glass, transparent, honest. The city lights of Ravenmore twinkled beyond, a silent, indifferent audience. The room had been cleaned, not by me, not by the humiliated junior staff, but by a new, legitimate, and properly paid third-party crew. The first one hired under my new authority. Everything was immaculate. The chrome gleamed. The obsidian table was a perfect black mirror. Almost perfect. I walked the length of the table. There, near the head where my father used to sit, was a single, faint ringlet of condensation, a ghost of a coffee cup, left behind from one of the frantic, all-night emergency board meetings that had taken place here over the past few days. A spot someone had missed. I went to the small service credenza in the corner. I took out a clean, soft cloth. I ran it under the hot water tap until it steamed. I walked back to the table, the warmth of the cloth a comforting weight in my hand. I knelt, not because I had to, not because I was ordered to, but because I chose to, because this was my room now, my company, my mess to clean. I placed the cloth on the table and wiped. One single, smooth, deliberate motion. The faint ring vanished. The surface was now flawless, reflecting the clean, quiet lights above. A soft knock on the open door frame made me look up. Evan was standing there, out of uniform, wearing a simple jacket and jeans. He wasn't security anymore. He had resigned the morning after the gala. His mission complete. He was just my brother. He looked from my face to the spot on the table where my hand rested. He nodded, a small, almost imperceptible gesture. "Spot's gone," he said. His voice was quiet, but it filled the room. I looked down at the perfect, unbroken surface of the table, then back at him. "Yeah," I replied, my voice a whisper. "The other one, too." He didn't need to ask which one I meant. We both knew. The stain of Sloane Vale had been wiped clean from this building. I stood up. I walked over to the side of the room where my journey had begun, the spot where her heel had connected with my ribs, on the floor. I placed the thick, off-white plastic keycard, the one with the faded blue stripe, the key to the sub-basement, my demotion, my weapon. I left it there, a small offering to the ghost of the woman I used to be. From my pocket, I took out my new ID. It was graphite gray, cool to the touch, with a secure holographic overlay. It read, "Avery Cole, Chief Compliance Officer." I didn't need to use it. The doors just opened for me now. As I turned to leave, a figure appeared in the glass partition of the hallway. My father. He looked smaller, diminished, a man lost in the corridors of the empire he had built and then abdicated. He stopped, his hand raised as if to knock on the glass. He wanted to come in. He wanted to talk, to explain, to apologize, to find some way back to a time before the rot had set in. I looked at him. Through the glass that now separated us, I didn't open the door. I didn't wave him in. I didn't offer forgiveness or absolution. That wasn't my job. I simply gave him a slow, deliberate nod. Acknowledgement. Nothing more. He understood. His hand fell to his side. He turned and walked away, a shadow disappearing down the long, empty hall. My gaze drifted upward, to the corner of the ceiling, to the small, black, mirrored dome of Camera 4B, my silent partner, the unblinking eye that had held the truth when no one else would, the only one who had seen everything, from the very beginning. I smiled. A real smile. It felt foreign on my face, a muscle I hadn't used in years. Granite and veil, I whispered. The words meant only for me, and for the room, and for the quiet lens above. It's going to be clean again. I turned and walked out of the conference room, Evan holding the door for me. It swung shut behind us, the latch clicking into place with a sound of quiet, final authority. The screen goes black. The end. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from, so please drop a comment below and share your thoughts on Avery's journey. If you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. And if you really want to support this story, hit that hype button to help it get heard by more people. Your support means the world.